Welcome, everyone. Hi, it's Clint Coons here, and I've got a very special guest who actually happens to be a client that I wanted to bring on and share with you some of her investing strategies when it comes to real estate investing. It's not very often that I'm speaking with a client, talking about structuring, and I hear something that just resonates, that is so different than what I typically hear when it comes to working with real estate investors. And I thought that you all would like to hear from her as well about the way in which she's been able to take investments and really maximize their value. Now, some of you may say, well, I've heard about that before, but hey, it was new to me. And so those of you that haven't, I wanted to share it. And we're going to do that by inviting on Danielle Villegas, who is, as I said, a client. She's a landlord, and she's really found success with her investing. And I want you to learn about that. Danielle, thanks for joining me.
Hey, good to be here.
Absolutely. Okay, so on your website, it states that you're a creative landlord. So what made you come up with that term?
Well, I was an art student. I kind of grew up thinking I should be my dad was a real estate investor, but he also worked a 40 plus hour a job his whole life. And I saw how those rentals kind of boosted his income and kept him going. So I had rentals in my mind from a long time. But when I decided to go to art school, I realized that, I might not be able to ever afford to buy a house. So I was I just expected to live a life below the fray, right?
Yeah, as an art student.
Yeah, exactly. I racked up student loan debt and, did all these kinds of things. And eventually, though, there was an opportunity when I had a real job for a while and I was able to qualify for a home. Of course, it was during that time when they were giving out loans left and right, which was super good, but I was still making the money. So I legitimately qualified and was able to purchase a home. And when I bought the home, what was in the back of my head the whole time was make sure you've got rental rooms, because as an artist, I'm not making very much money. I want to be able to do my artwork, and having that extra income is just tremendously important.
So you got this house and it was your first property. And of course, the mortgage is pretty big and the income is going to it's going to be difficult to support that mortgage. So a lot of people are familiar with the term house hacking. And is that how you first started out getting into this creative strategy that we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, more or less. I actually, while I was in college, I rented a little place, like a little farm worker shack in Los Angeles, in the outskirts of Los Angeles. And I bought a trailer for $500 and pulled it up on my land. And that trailer, the rental money I got from that actually paid most of my rent. So I was kind of already conditioned to not paying my own rent if I don't have to, or my own mortgage. So when there was a time, when I first bought the house, I could actually afford it. That job went away, and I actually became a financial advisor with a mutual life insurance company, where I learned a lot more of how the rich get richer, and all those tricks and tools of the trade. And I was a great salesperson, but I was selling to people like me, who were like artists who could not afford the big buck things. So I was one of the top salespeople in the company. However, because I was selling little policy, it never proved financially viable for me. So eventually I ended up leaving that. And you're absolutely right that when I left, this was around right after the economic fall hit and everything. I was in deep doo-doo I had refied. I had spent money building this business that was no longer really supporting me. And I was needing to make sure that mortgage was being paid. And so I started renting rooms to the easiest people I could, which at that time was 20-something-year-old guys. And I had 3 rooms in the basement, and I just started renting those rooms just to pay for the mortgage. And there's that's why I talk about creative is, if you don't qualify for the loan because you have to be making certain thing, or what they're counting isn't working, they're back off and figure out how to do that and give them what they want. And there are ways to do that very creatively. So, creative financing with that was how I got the refi, and the refi made all the difference. It cut my mortgage in half, and
Yeah.
I was then able to start being profitable.
On those. Now, so you talked about renting first off to 20-some-year-old guys. Now, is that a demographic that you're still looking towards or
No,
for?
no, they were quick and easy. You could rent a room for $500, and they came, they did their thing, and then they went. It's easy to get those guys because they're always looking for places. And, I didn't ask a lot of money on down payments, on, deposits and things like that. I just needed the money. And so I'd get them in, and I was doing weekly. I found out that if I could charge weekly, which a lot of people actually are really okay with, that when you add up those weeks, they end up giving you more money than just what you say. Like $200 a week, people think is $800. No, it's $866. That little bit of extra money is helpful, and it does end up adding up in the long run. And it's those pennies and then it's those savings things that ended up allowing me to keep building.
You start out with doing house hacking, and now you become a landlord. And in your landlording, what you're doing, from what you described, is you're not just renting out the house, you're renting out rooms in the house to tenants. So A, I want to find out, how do you find those people? And then B, you're renting it out on a weekly rate.
Yeah.
Because you essentially collect an extra month's worth of rent when you break it down weekly versus doing it monthly.
Right. Well, so the first year or so, or first maybe couple years, I was really, getting these young guys in, which ended up being a huge headache after a while. But once again, I had to pay that mortgage. So it was really important that I got the money in there. And I did. And I was able to manage them enough. But, I had to kick guys out, and there was drugs, all sorts of stuff. But because they were kids, I mean, it was just a little easier to deal with them. I did end up later, and I was still living in the house, but they were in the basement. And then I had the house proper, which was upstairs. Eventually, I started renting the room upstairs as well. And there's so many people warning everybody about tenants, and I get it. I get that tenants are really important. And I have learned over time how to choose those tenants, and what helps me is it's nice if they have a job. That is like the number one thing, is if they have a job. And a lot of them have two jobs, because in this economy, a lot of people have to have two jobs just to get by. And also furnished. It's easier to move somebody out when they don't bring a bunch of furniture and stuff. It's much nicer when they come with a backpack and their computer or whatever. And you'd be surprised how many people just have their, belongings in a bag or in their car, are able to consolidate, have stuff in storage or whatever, and are willing to take a nice furnished place where everything is paid for, all the utilities, Wi-Fi. I provide cooking stuff, dinnerware and linens. And I don't buy these all new, folks. I go to the thrift store and I look for really, good deals on stuff. And so I have a big storage of new sheets, and I make sure everything's clean and all that. But I mean, I'm not going to spend $25 or $30 on a sheet set when I can get it for $5. And once again, it's these little things that end up adding up to a lot more money at the end of the month, in your savings.
Now, in a traditional shared housing arrangement, people will rent out a room, and then they have shared facilities. So you share the kitchen, you share the bathroom, maybe, but you did it a little different with yours.
Yeah, over time, I did. Now, when I first started renting rooms, I had a laundry room downstairs, which I converted immediately into a kitchen. And so there was a kitchen and a bathroom down there, which meant that they didn't ever need to come upstairs. So they had their own entrance, and they had their own kitchen, they had their own bathroom. So I was never living with them. Later on, when I started renting the room upstairs in my space, I had a couple of really successful tenants, and these were generally ones that I rented on a weekly type basis because I didn't want to get stuck with anybody for an extended period of time. So I did furnished executive rental, with everything taken care of. And I would get a lot of people from out of town who may be doing residencies or coming to visit their folks or whatever. And I would just take temporary people and charge a fairly higher weekly rate and collect that money. Those people tend to be pretty solid. Yeah.
How do you find the tenants then that you're going to put in your houses?
Okay. So I no longer do anybody in their 20s really anymore because they're just too flighty. And oddly enough, what has happened over this last 5 years or so is, this homeless situation that we have all over the country is really affecting a lot of people, and it's affecting a lot of quote unquote regular Joes that work full time or that have one or two jobs that are still having a difficult time, whether it's because they have a bad credit record or whatever. And they're having a difficult time putting out the 3 times the rent or whatever it is, that there's just a huge population that is not qualifying or is not unable to or whatever for traditional housing and rental places. So there's tons of people out there, and I'll tell you who I'm actually getting lately is a lot of people in their 50s and 60s. I used to get a lot of 20s and 30s answering, and then slowly over time, the age has gone up. I have also become a little bit more picky about who I'm going to take. And like I said, I generally don't take 20 somethings because they don't stay. In my houses, what I have done is anytime I can give a person their own things, like their own bathroom or their own kitchenette, maybe, I do that because you can charge more money. The more they have their own place with their own stuff and their own privacy, even if it's an 11 by 11 foot room with a kitchenette and a bathroom attached to it, that room is more coveted than sharing a double size room for some people. And so people need their own space. And if you're able, I've been able to thus far put kitchenettes in rooms, and also, try to add bathrooms where I can.
Do they have common spaces they share, or did you break them all up so there's really not even any common spaces?
I have discovered that common space is a waste of your money because that space is, when you get tenants who have jobs and have lives, they come in, they do their thing in their room, and they may use the facilities, and then they're out the door. The more common space you have, the more chance you have for interaction of tenants, which is sometimes great, but it's also sometimes detrimental if people aren't getting along or if people are bringing friends over and stuff. And the more people you have, the more difficult it is to keep everybody happy. So I broke up all my houses so that I have divvied up the whole spaces, which means that living rooms become studio apartments. I pop a little kitchen into a corner of it, and then figure out on the bathroom situation. Like I said, I try to give everybody as much of their own stuff as possible, because I find that you get top dollar for when they get their own space. When they get their own space, they generally are going to pay more. So, and I keep my places clean. I keep them quiet. I keep all the tenants, they're all working. And I also keep in communication with them enough so that I know what's going on. And since many of them are paying me weekly or they're paying me every 2 weeks, I often do their paycheck. If they get paid every other Friday, I say, okay, well, you're going to pay me every other Friday then. And that way, if they lose their jobs, if something happens, much quicker than waiting till the end of the month to not get your money.
So how are you finding the tenants then? Where do you advertise?
I'm about 95% Craigslist.
Craigslist. And what is your ad? What would the typical ad say to find someone like this?
So generally I will place ads in both. Okay, so if it's a shared kind of situation where you're going to be sharing a bathroom or sharing a kitchen, then I will post in shared, but I will also post in sublets and temporary.
Mhm.
And in the sublets and temporary, often there's nurses and stuff, and there's some that don't mind sharing a kitchenette or whatever, or a kitchen with somebody. So sublets and temporary, I will do executive furnished unit, uh, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of it is how you describe it as well. Um, I don't put a ton of pictures. I find that actually pictures can cut your throat sometimes. A lot of people are like, why don't you put so many pictures? Well, I'll tell you what, people don't like yellow curtains. And actually, those curtains aren't even in the room anymore, but I had a picture of it, so I put them up, and that lost a tenant. So I just, I put minimal amount of pictures and real clean. I actually do lifestyle pictures, like feely pictures rather
Yeah.
than literal pictures, and that's helpful.
Okay, so when you're conversing with them, do you advertise that it's a weekly rental, or do you say it's a long-term rental but you pay weekly?
So what I normally do is I say the rate is calculated weekly.
Yep.
However, I have a 3-month minimum. Rate is calculated weekly. Although I have a 3-month minimum. Sometimes a kitchenette can be provided for an additional fee, right? There's
Mhm.
more money for a little throwing in a refrigerator and a microwave or whatever. Um, and basically, I will generally, this is how I do it. I think it's really important. People don't answer the phones on the ads in Craigslist. Just in case you were wondering, there's 1,000 ads in Craigslist, and it's mostly to rental companies, and most of them do not answer the phone. So they're leaving messages. I answer the phone. I actually answer the phone. And the first thing I do when I talk to a potential client is I throw the ball in their court and I say, hi, so tell me a little bit about yourself, your situation, and what you're looking for. And then I just shut up.
Let them talk.
And they generally will tell you exactly where they are. And I found that little trick saves me tons of time. Have your red flag radar on to 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 remember what they said and to catch any contradictions when they actually come to talk to you, to meet you, because if there's contradictions, then there's problems. But the more they talk, the better you listen, and you can actually piece together the story better and
Well,
so that's going to minimize your risk.
so give me an example of one of your homes on average. How many rooms do you have in it now?
Okay.
And what does it generate per month?
So the first house that I got was technically a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and it had a basement with a bedroom in it, and then it had like an office and a weird living room thing. I sliced that kind of all up. I made two-room units in the basement that share a kitchen and bath, and the house proper I was able to actually keep. And then there was a little woodshed in the corner outside, which I added a bathroom to and a kitchenette, and that's its own unit. And then I built a 2-story tiny home in the backyard, fully hooked up.
Mhm.
And that house generates about $6,200 a month. Um, so I average with I have, like I said, 17 doors in 3 properties, and I average about $1,000 a month per tenant.
Wow.
So
So when you're looking for a property, are there certain characteristics you're looking for when you're going to buy a new home to make sure that it fits your model?
the first house I purchased legitimately, I was actually making the money, and I bought it. The second house that I bought, I actually bought through an ad in Craigslist that was one of these lease to own deals. And I called the number, and it was a brand new out of the chute wholesaler, a kid who was trying to wholesale. And he had
Hmm.
found this guy, and I was actually able to get an owner finance property just a couple of years ago. That was a cute little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, but it had a garage with an office on it next door to it that was the same size as a house. So when I went through it, uh, it I saw at least 5 units there. And so I was able to convert that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 800 square foot house, making the garage into another unit, and above the garage into another unit. but the banks, I'm not bankable. So I had to go commercial, and I had a really good guy over here who was able to get me, based on the fact that I was making income from these other houses. We were able to leverage that and also borrow money out of the equity of one of the houses to put on the down. So I was able to get another big house to do this whole situation with. So there's other ways of getting things besides traditional lending, and it's a lot is just, digging and more digging.
So if
But
somebody wanted to get started doing this with their existing house, or maybe they're just investing on the coast where things are more expensive, what would you want to leave with them that they're considering this? What are some salient points they got to know?
Well, so what I would say is that I think when I talk to people about this, I tell people what I do and they go, wow, that sounds really great, but I could never live with anybody. And my first response to that is, you don't have to live with anybody. We can there's ways to carve out the house inexpensively so that you can actually be pulling money in from the corners of your house that you don't use, or that you didn't think of using, or that were being used for something else. I think it's a real shame right now how many people have so much extra room in their house that they could be renting out to people who actually need it. We're not doing that. So, and I know that money is an object for, like, oh, I can't afford a remodel. That's going to cost $30,000 or $40,000. Yes, it could. It absolutely could cost $30,000 or $40,000. But if you have time and you have some skills or ways of making relationships with people who actually can work for you, that's another way of doing things. And I've been able to have my own crew for the last few years. I did not pay for any of my modifications or remodeling or this traditional ways. I couldn't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
I was basically going by the skin of my teeth and a little bit of rental income. But I tell you what, finding a carpenter who's down on his luck and is living in his truck, or who is about to live in his truck, would surely do some trade work. So I'm not saying that everybody should do that, because I think, you kind of need to have some skills and some experience to do that. But I've also learned the hard way, and, but I'm proof that it can be done.
Yeah, and if people want to see the idea and get the concept behind it, you created a website called artoflandlording.com.
Yeah.
And you've got pictures up there of your homes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And definitely you should go and take a look at it, so it gives you inspiration, ideas of how you can take a property and carve it up into these little niche spaces for people, right, and then maximize the revenue from those properties.
Yeah, I just created that website not too long ago. I really want to share what I've learned, and I'm totally open to helping people out. I actually have helped quite a few people out, whether it's to figure out how to buy their first home, the different kinds of options and how to do that, whether it be wholesale or not, or traditional. Just depends on what situation you're in. Leveraging, I think, is really important to understand that concept and know that if you have something of value, that there are ways to leverage it. And there's a lot to it. And I definitely am open to sharing all my tricks of the trade. I want people to be successful, and there's plenty of room out there. And there's a lot of people that need housing. And I think ultimately that's really the most important thing. And I never looked at myself as a professional landlord. I always used to call myself accidental landlord, right? But it, in a way, my realization that it's become a service, and that it is a service, and that it's actually the people that I care about. It's not just the money. I think that kind of, it's deeper. And I think in this economy, with the way things are in the world, I feel like I'm making a difference, and it's very rewarding. And I certainly am up for helping people who also have interest in doing things this way.
Great. And they can contact you through your site. I see it's got artoflandlord@gmail.com, and has your phone number there. So, hey, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on here and share with us your story. like I said, when I first started working with you, I was just so amazed that, from where you started to where you've come with your investing. It's an inspiration that for people who are thinking about getting started in real estate, or they're kind of struggling, wondering how they can make more money. I mean, it's out there. You just look at your investments from a different perspective, and you bring that.
Right. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me on. I really, like I said, I mean, I'm at this point now where I'm getting ready to retire,
Yeah.
and it's been literally, I've been doing this for less than 10 years. I've had the two houses for only 4 years, not even 4 years, just like 3 years. And I literally have three guys outside painting this house right now as we speak. And I have a roof upstairs that's getting done in a couple of days by the husband of my cleaning gal. And if you've got any kind of skills, or you just want to learn about what the possibilities are, give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. I like helping.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it, Danielle.
Thank you, Clint.
All right. Take care.